thank you all so much for coming. Really excited to be connecting with you all and with Bryan Hamblin from BYU Law as well. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Steve Schwartz. I run the LSAT blog. I also host the LSAT Unplugged YouTube channel and podcast. I've been teaching the LSAT for about 15 years now, and surprisingly, it's actually been a lot of fun. And admissions is not my game, though, so I'm very excited to welcome Bryan Hamblin, Director of Admissions at BYU Law. Bryan, welcome.
Hey, thanks. Great to be here.
Thanks so much for joining us. So I would love it if you would just dive in and share a little bit about yourself and your background, and then we could jump into the agenda for tonight.
Yeah, you bet. So at some point as an undergrad, I decided I want to do higher ed as a career. So I switched to major to political science and started working in undergraduate admissions after graduation, and started thinking about grad school options, and realized I loved my undergraduate law classes. And so I thought, if I can go to law school and then come back and work in higher ed, it would be a win-win. So that's what I did. I went to Indiana University for law school, and I did some undergraduate work, did like career counseling, pre-law advising, then also worked at another law school doing admissions, and I've been here at BYU. This is my second year.
Oh, wow, fantastic.
Yeah.
Fantastic. So I was thinking that, Bryan, for tonight, we could start off by talking a little bit about some of the recent LSAT changes over at LSAC. That's a big topic of interest among students with the digital LSAT, cancellations, retakes, and so on. And the big question, of course, is how does admissions look at all of this? And so I guess one topic that comes to mind that I get a lot is students asking, I took the LSAT, it was digital, something went wrong with the tablet or something went wrong with the proctors because it is this transitional period. How will admissions look at things if LSATs are lower than expected or there's more cancellations than students might have otherwise had?
I think, speaking for us, I think we'll be pretty forgiving if there are some technical difficulties. I feel like if it's a lower score, a student wants to address that, that's fine, but I would probably just sign right up again and try to take it again. Having gone through that digital experience, you at least know what to expect, and hopefully there aren't any complications. Cancellations, we generally, unless there's a sort of a pattern there, we really don't view negatively here at BYU. I can imagine exceptions, but as a general rule, if you want to address that, if somebody cancels for some reason, especially if it's because something went wrong with the digital LSAT, or your tablet froze or whatever it might be, absolutely, share that with us. But as a general rule, it's not a big deal unless it sort of contributes to a pattern of issues that seem to pop up.
That's good to hear, and that's my intuition as well. That one cancellation, no big deal. Anybody could have a bad day.
Yeah. And
then with regard to the score being lower, I think the ultimate takeaway I got from you was something I've heard from other admissions officers as well, which is basically retake, and get that higher score.
Yeah. It seems like there is an adjustment, especially if people have been studying with the paper, taking practice tests. I think getting used to it, my understanding is it's been pretty seamless. People have been pretty happy with the tablet, and the way that it's been set up. It runs pretty smoothly, but I understand that there can be a transition and it might not be smooth for everybody. But hopefully that's something that they can also learn and eventually kind of match the scores they were getting on the paper tests.
Right. So let's say someone took the LSAT in July. Maybe they canceled because of the free retake. That was a unique thing for the July LSAT. Then they took it again or they're taking it again in November, let's say. And then they're thinking they might want to retake in January. So a couple of things come up. That would then be 3 takes in one admission cycle, which is hitting that new retake limit. Is 3 too many to have along that time span of July, October, or November, and then January?
Not for us. I think, and that actually works well, especially if they're aiming for this fall. Our priority deadline is March 2nd. And so that January test is a great one. So if they're trying to make a push for this cycle, that makes perfect sense for us, especially because July was so unique. People that wanted to cancel and take it again, that sort of puts a kind of an asterisk on that. They would cancel there. So no, for us, I think really, especially if they're working hard, they're studying, and they're seeing an improvement with their test scores, then it's only a positive in my book. If they're going up, then by all means, you made the most of those 3 chances. So that's fantastic.
And so also the big takeaway there is that 3 takes is no big deal. You can take it and have 2 retakes, and that's totally fine, even if they're within a 6-month period, let's say.
Yeah, for sure. Every once in a while, if somebody's scores keep going down as they retake it, it will raise questions. We'll wonder about that, and you might wonder if the high score is really representative, if that really is their true score. But generally, that doesn't happen. Most people, if they keep working at it, do tend to improve their scores.
Yeah, and I don't see a downward trend very often with LSAT scores. That would be extremely
Yeah.
unique.
Yeah, it's rare. It happens. There's just a couple every once in a while that pop up, and it's unusual.
Yeah, I mean, if you're dealing with tens of thousands of people, of course, you're going to have a few outliers,
Yeah.
just statistically. But the other question that comes to mind, two things. One is that you said it would raise some red flags, but overall, you are considering the highest score. Is that correct?
Yes, absolutely. Even if they went down each time, the high score is the one that will use.
Right, statistically and for input and the ABA and the rankings and all that. Then the next question, which you answered a little bit, but I want to draw that out a bit more. The January LSAT is not too late.
It is not at all for us. Not at all for us. In fact, I should even say our priority deadline, that March 2nd deadline, is a soft deadline. So we will still consider people that have taken the March and last year even the June LSAT. Now, space becomes tight. Spots are limited. We don't have any idea, like moving through April and beyond, how many spots we might have and what the wait list might look like. But if somebody feels like they still have a better score in them and they want to try in March, let us know. Like, I usually encourage people to reach out to us and tell us that's their plan. And we usually will refrain from making a decision until we get that newest LSAT.
And how is scholarship money affected by applying later in the cycle?
Yeah, so this year we're doing it a little bit differently. Most of our scholarships, other than we have a Clark scholarship is our biggest scholarship. We can talk about that later if we want to. But for most of our scholarships, our merit scholarships, we're going to award those after the priority deadline this year. And so we'll kind of see how much we have. And that could be a limiting factor as people apply late. Certainly we had late applications in the summer. We let them know that our scholarship budget had been spent. And so we said, in a couple of cases, we said, we have a spot for you if you want it. But you're also welcome to apply next year if you'd like to wait to see how you get these scholarships. So those are conversations we can have. So scholarships are certainly something to consider if you're applying late, but we can talk about that if they have questions. Applicants can reach out to us. We try to be pretty open, pretty engaging to let students know where we stand as much as possible.
Oh, and by the way, speaking of questions, actually, I saw someone raise their hand in the webinar. Please feel free to just type your questions in the chat as you think of them, and we'll address them and work them in as we can. Feel free to interrupt with your questions. We're happy to address them. Now, moving away from scholarships for a moment, though, just to timelines in general, Bryan, you were saying that March and June, someone could take the March and June LSAT, and depending if there's spots available, they could still be accepted to start law school that fall, meaning 6 months later or less after having taken the LSAT.
Correct. Yeah. Yeah, we did have some late applicants that took that June LSAT. Usually there are people on our wait list that, hey, I think I have a better score in me. I'm going to take that June LSAT. And we said, absolutely, let us know. We're happy to sit and wait and see how that goes. We even had a couple, because the last 2 years we had enough scholarship budget where we had we had some people that asked, hey, they were admitted and they asked, can we take the scholarship again, see if I can improve my scholarship? And we said, yes, go for it. So we had some of those people taking the March and June LSATs as well. And so that was kind of unique. We had a couple of people that moved their scores up and actually did move and improve their scholarships. So
that's great. That's fantastic.
When possible, yeah. When we have the budget, we're really happy to, encourage students to do their best. So.
Yeah. And I would imagine that BYU law is not unique in this, that other law schools also, in some cases, depending on openings and availability, other applicants could apply to those schools as well, even later in the cycle.
I think so. That's my understanding. That's been my experience. So I'm sure some others might have some other external factors that cap that, but you can always reach out to the school and ask. I think most schools will be pretty open about what your options are.
Do you find that things vary a lot from year to year?
Yeah, that's a good question. On the margins, they kind of do. Like every year, sort of each class sort of starts to take shape in a slightly different way. For example, 2 years ago, we were kind of flush with high LSATs, and we could use some higher GPAs. Last year, it was the reverse. Like we had plenty of high GPAs, and we could have used some higher LSATs to kind of balance that out. So, but essentially, it kind of follows a similar pattern. The numbers, after that 2008, 2010 drop off, things kind of stabilized again. So things once they settled, I think things have been pretty consistent. Like we try our best to, But on the margins, there's always some changes. So we kind of have to be able to be flexible and adapt. But yeah, so in some ways, every year is a new cycle. The applicant will take shape in its own way. And so you kind of, in some regards, take what you get. But it's not crazy different. It's not like a wild fluctuations going on.
Sure. All right, so I want to talk a little bit in a general sense about different parts of the application, and then we've got some really specific questions from the audience here. Just generally speaking, law school personal statements, what are some do's and don'ts? Any particularly bad statements you've seen recently?
Yeah, well, I read one today that was just so vague. It was just, I feel like this candidate thought they were telling us something and there was nothing there. There was just all these sort of vague and there's just no substance to it. So got to the end, I'm not sure what lesson you learned. I'm not sure what you went through. I don't know any of the details. I don't know who you are still. And it really could have used an editor. It's really what it needed. As a general rule, I mean, the personal statement is generally, it's our best chance to get to know an applicant. So we really like to just find out who you are. We don't have a guiding question for our personal statement. It's pretty wide open, but it's always, I think, a good idea to come up with your own thesis. What do you want to tell us about yourself? And it could be why law school. It could be this is something in my life that made me who I am. It's really difficult that I overcame, or there's a number of ways you can go about that. And what's funny, for whatever type, whatever style of personal statement you see good ones and you see bad ones. You see ones that are handled really well, and you see ones that are handled poorly. And sometimes when they're handled poorly, they sort of fall into the cliches. They kind of tell you, well, I want to go to law school to help people. And then they leave it at that. They don't tell you what that means to them, or they don't show you how sort of their demonstrated commitment to helping an underserved population or engaging in a certain type of work. Where as a reader, we almost say, well, obviously law school is the next logical step. Like we can put the pieces together really easily when it's done well. And so those are, some of those things make a difference when we're reading it. Of course, just almost like 7th grade writing advice, well organized, that 5-paragraph paper. You don't want to be introducing new ideas at the end. Like having some structure really matters. It really helps. And of course, again, like I mentioned before, taking it to an editor, that makes a difference too.
Yeah, I really want to emphasize that, especially getting it edited. There is no reason not to have a 2nd or 3rd or 4th or 10th pair of eyes look this over while still making sure you retain your own voice. I mean, the writing sample will be the unfiltered writing, but there's no reason it can't be edited and perfected.
Yeah. And like you said, the part about kind of retaining your own voice, obviously there's editing for grammar and spelling, which matter. But there's also the editing, like to say, is this coming across? Is the tone that I was hoping to strike? How does it maybe take it to somebody who doesn't know you? So what do you think of this person, that you're reading? Does this come across as, sometimes people come across as arrogant or privileged or complaining, whining. Others times, you're hitting the right tone where you're coming across as confident and also somebody who's been introspective and has learned a lot and has grown as a person and is eager for law school to be the next step. So tone, you can have editors that help you with that too.
Yeah, and in a way, I think sometimes applicants they're overly formal to the point where it becomes vague, as you said, and then it actually doesn't have their own voice at all, and they need other people to help bring in their voice or bring it back to that.
Yeah, and those with their own distinct voice are typically some of the most memorable. You feel like, oh, I know this person. I see this person, and it helps because you have their transcript, you have their LSAT scores, you have their numbers and some of those things, but it helps you see them as a person, helps them shine through, and that's pretty exciting.
Yeah, it definitely is. I think that ultimately the worst personal statements that I review for my students, it's not that they're choosing bad topics, because usually people have the judgment to avoid bad topics that are clearly taboo in some way or just inappropriate, but it's just that they're boring or they're not showing any anecdotes or details.
Yeah. Yep, I think you're right on.
Yeah. Now, how long do you typically want personal statements to be?
We ask for just 2 pages. We really want them to be nice and succinct. And so stick to 2 pages.
Yeah, that's what I typically recommend. I'll typically recommend that folks write a rough draft that's like 3 times that length and then just chop it down bit by bit so every piece is airtight.
Yeah, I think that's great advice. Resume-wise, for what it's worth, we want 1 page, which sometimes people feel cramped by that. I mean, we have professors that sometimes apply and feel like, I have, a lot of years worth of a CV here, and you want it 1 page, and we want 1 page.
Yeah.
So And so for an undergraduate, somebody coming right out of undergrad, I think one page should be very doable, but not everybody kind of follows those instructions.
Yeah. Yeah. I noticed that. I mean, it is definitely hard for your applicants to fit the resume to one page because everyone thinks every detail matters, but you got to make some tough choices there. But
Yeah.
do you notice things like if things are not formatted correctly or they're not, the style is not consistent throughout?
Yeah, we do. We'll kind of note it's secondary. Like the content matters more. But I mean, good formatting always helps. It just makes it more legible. It just helps it be more like well organized. And so we'll notice that, but it's secondary.
Right. What about character and fitness statements? I mean, do you notice any mistakes there? Or is there anything that you're uniquely prone to looking a bit more closely at?
Well, I think when character and fitness statements go poorly, I think there are usually two things. One, sometimes people can actually overshare. I think, like sometimes you can just stick to the facts. You can be sort of let us know what happened and what you did to take care of it, and that's plenty. Other times people can be they don't usually come across as well when it sounds like people are making excuses, but they haven't taken ownership for what happened either. So that doesn't always read as well. But so for the most part, I think a lot of those character and fitness things just stick to the facts. Let us know what happened. Let us know, how you resolved it. Let us know where you were with that. Maybe every once in a while there might be a couple of issues that pop up, academic integrity, plagiarism, or something where we might want to know. Just tell us a little bit more about how that you resolved it, like because those are some issues that might linger for us. The funny thing about that is all those character and fitness issues are usually pretty unique, so it's hard for me to cast a big generalization. But hopefully those two tips help a little bit.
No, I think they do, and I think taking ownership and I guess addressing the concern that could this happen again.
Yeah.
But what about, I guess for me, they would fall into like two major categories. There's like traffic tickets and like youthful indiscretions of a minor nature in undergrad versus like major felonies that I think a significantly smaller percentage of applicants would have. So for the former category, the minor stuff, either youthful stupidity or traffic tickets, what are you looking for in that in terms of like length, in terms of just tone overall?
Yeah, again, usually pretty brief. I think 1 to 3 paragraphs even. Again, depending on what it is, just to kind of let us know what it was and how it was taken care of. It's resolved. Not going to happen again. That's typically plenty. I don't want to read another personal statement about that issue, which every once in a while we get that. But yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. I could see how you wouldn't want it to be the focus of the application. I mean, that's something that's so minor and should be shorter than a personal statement, right?
Yeah, that's exactly right. And sometimes people like the sort of the focus all of a sudden changes, like where people spend more time on that statement, and that is almost telling us more about them than the personal statement.
Right. And I guess for the applicant's perspective, you should focus on something positive.
That's right.
Right?
Yeah.
Now let's shift gears a little bit and talk about letters of recommendation. And we could talk about where to get them and such. But one question I keep getting from applicants is if I'm reapplying the following year, do I need new letters? And how old can the letters be?
Yeah, so my opinion is that if they're reapplying just that next year, typically those other letters, if they're usually, so let's say they applied towards the end of the cycle. They applied in February or March. And then they're applying again. They're like, I didn't get in. I'm going to get a jump on this. Their application opens up in September. I'm going to apply in September. Those letters are not that old. They're not even a year old for a lot of these students. And I'm pretty comfortable with those letters being the same. After a year, I think it makes sense to get them like redone, freshen them up. Even if they're from the same professors, same recommenders, I think it just helps so that the date, so we can see that they've gone to the effort to improve their application. And so yeah, I do think that after that first year, it's sort of up to they can use their best discretion, but I don't look down on somebody that's reusing those same letters.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I guess current is more relevant, of course.
Yeah.
Now, as for who to get them from, is it okay to get from 2 professors, 2 employers, 1 of each?
we here at BYU, we have a strong preference for professors. We'd love to see those academic letters of recommendation. And most of the time, it actually is because they tend to do a better service for the students. They tend to tell us more. And so the professors just, I think, have a sense of how to write these letters to let us know some of the things we're looking for in applicants, and give us an idea what to expect as we bring them into our own classrooms. And so our preference is professors. Now, there often are situations where they have a real strong professor letter, and then there's somebody else that's a supervisor, maybe an advisor of some other kind, where they feel like can offer some additional insight and still write something good. And so by all means, they're welcome to do that. And of course, non-traditional applicants, if they're a little bit older or they've been out of school for 5-10 years, sometimes they've lost a relationship with the professor. We don't expect them to try to jog the memory from a decade ago of professors they might have had a couple classes from. So they just pull the best professional references they can.
Yeah, I think that was really one of the biggest concerns I get from a lot of older applicants is that they haven't talked to this professor. The professor doesn't know them. The professor's moved on.
Yeah.
So that's good to hear. That's good to hear. And then I guess, are there any like pitfalls of letters that students want to avoid?
Yeah, I think the best advice is still when you're talking to somebody about writing a letter, maybe be explicit. Say, are you comfortable writing a good letter of recommendation for me? And it's like, I had these classes from you, I did these things. Here's some of the comments you made on my papers or my exams. Hopefully they were positive. There's a reason why you're going to that professor and asking that question, but just to make sure the professor really is fully on board in sort of supporting you in this effort. It's still rare that we get everyone. I think I read once there was somebody who wrote, I asked the student not to use me as a recommendation, and they insisted, and so here it is. And it was a very, at best, lukewarm letter of recommendation. That's rare. People are still going to do their best, I think, for these students, these applicants. But I think having that conversation up front, just say, are you comfortable writing this for me? And some professors might say no. I think that they might say, I think that you would be better served by going to someone else. And you'd rather know that up front than for us to find out on our end.
Oh, of course. Yeah. I mean, if someone tells you no, don't use that person. I mean, it's a recommendation letter.
Yeah.
And there's a wide variety and quality that one can get out of that. It's not like getting a letter, any letter is good enough. You're better off just scraping through your address book and contacts and finding someone else.
In some cases, yes. Yeah.
Fantastic. All right. Well, I think we've covered the different parts of the application, at least the biggest parts, pretty thoroughly. We have a ton of questions here in the chat.
Great.
That I'd love to dive into with you. So let's see what we've got here. We've got a couple specific to BYU. So let's start there. Does BYU have early admissions that's binding?
Not exactly. So we do a rolling admission. Now we do have our best scholarship program is called the Clark Scholarship. And so that one, we do ask students to apply for that by January 8th, their deadline this year. And that they typically have to have an LSAT above our median, like a 165 or better, plus a strong GPA. It's kind of this term. And then from there, we invite about 30 students to come interview for the Clark Scholarship. And so at that point, and we usually do the interview in later in January, make the decisions in February. So really around, but usually a little bit before our priority deadline, we'll have the decisions for the Clark Scholars. When we make those invitations, like when we award those scholarships, we do ask students, when they accept that scholarship, to withdraw from other schools that they've applied to. But that's a full tuition plus $10,000 a year stipend for 3 years. It's a pretty significant scholarship. So our students that are awarded that are usually pretty excited about that. So that's the only thing that we really have that's binding. But otherwise, we don't have an early admission or anything that's binding.
But that sounds like an incredible opportunity, though. My God, I mean, I've never heard of anything quite so generous.
Yeah, and those folks that are invited that end up not getting the Clark are awarded the Dean Scholarship, which is full tuition plus a $2,500 a year stipend. So it's worthwhile, I think, for people to do their best and apply early and get on board.
Yeah, that's still quite good as well. Yeah, I would encourage anyone considering BYU to definitely go for that if they're interested.
Yeah, and it's funny. I mean, we're already, like, as far as value goes, we're like the best return on investment of any. I think we're right there, 1 and 2 in the top 50 law schools. We have the best tuition of any of the top 50 law schools. So So there's already some value there, but if you can add a scholarship like that, it's nice. It's nice that so many of our students graduate with like debt-free. I think 27% graduated with no student loans this last year. And so
That's amazing.
it's significant.
Definitely opens up the career opportunities afterwards without that weight of the debt hanging over you.
Yeah, that's what we're hoping. Yeah.
Fantastic. All right. Well, let's get some other questions here. Someone went to the career fair at BYU, Idaho, and heard, is that the same as your school, or are they affiliated in some way? What's that relationship like?
So all the BYU schools, BYU here in Provo, BYU Idaho, BYU Hawaii, so we all are affiliated kind of with the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, but we all are our separate institutions that are run separately, and so there's not like a direct link. But we do, we get great applicants from both schools, the other BYU schools every year, and so, but we look at them as they're separate institutions.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that. So anyway, I think that was actually beside the point for this question anyway here. The student was asking that, are students admitted in separate pools such as high LSAT, high GPA, or average of both? Do you actually separate applicants into different pools like that?
Yeah, that's a great question. So it does sound like you talked to our Dean of Admissions, Dean Stewart, up at the law fair. So we do, in fact, and I don't think this is that uncommon for admissions committees, but certainly we do take the LSAT and the GPA, and they really do frame the discussion for our committee. They essentially do divide it into 4 groups for us. So you have those that are above our medians in both, above an LSAT, below in GPA, above in GPA, below in LSAT, those that are below in both. And so we do start to compare against each other out of each of those groups. And the percent that are admitted out of each group is different. Obviously, if you're above in both, the chance of being admitted is much higher. And in some ways, our approach to the other materials kind of depends on which category they're in with their academic numbers. So if you're above the medians in both, in some ways the presumption is that academically they should be very comfortable in the classroom, pass the bar when the time comes. So we're almost looking at their letters and their resume and their personal statement and those other pieces of the application. Say, are there any red flags? Is there anything here that suggests maybe they don't play well with others? Maybe their personal statement is just bizarre. And we're like, I don't know if this person is okay. I hope they're okay. But I'm not confident. There are certain things like that. Like we're looking for, is there anything in here that's disqualifying as we're making the decision? Now, obviously, as we get down to the group that's below our medians in both, that also happens to be the biggest group. So we admit about the same number of people out of each group, but that last group is by far the most competitive just because of the numbers. So from there, we're really looking at those materials. And I should say, at the same time, within that group, there is still a range. We're still looking for people that are in the ballpark with their GPA, with their LSAT. We still want them to be, we want the confidence that they can hang in the classroom and they can pass the bar. But within that group, we're really looking at those personal statements and those letters and those resumes to say, really, who shines, like who stands out, who is stronger than the numbers, or who has done some things, has some experience that really would be a valuable addition to the classroom conversation. Who adds to the law school. And so our approach is a little bit different. And so that is sort of how we frame a lot of the discussions for our committee, is in those 4 groups.
Well, thank you for clarifying that. It's very interesting to hear what's going on behind the scenes, how you're grouping different applicants. And it's also good to hear that if someone is below the numbers, below those medians on both LSAT and GPA, that those soft factors, if they're as close to perfect as possible, those can make a difference.
Yeah. Every year they do. Absolutely do. So
amazing. Very interesting. All right. So we got some more here. Nikki's asking for older non-traditional applicants, best people to ask for letters of rec. Aside from employers, is there anyone else who would come to mind?
Well, it does. Again, it depends on the applicant, depends on what they've been involved with. I can think of some of our applicants where they've done a lot of volunteer work. So maybe it was with somebody in the community that was working on the same organization, who could have been a supervisor, could have been a coworker, that they go to that person to just talk about what their strengths are, what their skills are, what they did as part of this endeavor. So it kind of depends on the person, but so the most common one, of course, are professional references, the supervisors, the bosses, those people that watch them work every day. But it can vary.
Okay, I also have a somewhat related question I got from someone in the LSAT Unplugged Facebook group that I manage. Someone was telling me that BYU asks for a letter from clergy. Is that true? And could you share something on that?
That's a great question. So it's not actually a letter, but we do have a unique portion to our application. It's called an ecclesiastical endorsement. And so because we're affiliated with the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and we do have an honor code that we expect students, regardless of what faith or non-faith you might have, we ask, that you're willing to live these certain things. And so there is this ecclesiastical endorsement. It's this two-step. One, if you're not LDS, we ask you to go to your own religious leader to kind of walk through, have them fill out a form. So it's not really a letter, but it's just fill out the form. And then for the second, to come to the BYU non-denominational chaplain for that second. For our LDS students, it's their local bishop and then their state president. So that is actually, that is an extra kind of step that I think is pretty unique to us. But if students happen to have questions about how to do that, our BYU undergraduates are pretty familiar with that process. They do that already. But other students that haven't gone to BYU, if that throws them off at all, if they have questions or not sure how to make it work, absolutely contact our office. We're happy to help connect you with the people you need to connect with or answer your questions about that.
And those letters, are they fairly straightforward in somewhat more of a template style than the traditional letters of rec?
Yeah. And we don't even consider it a letter. It's more like check boxes. They'll just kind of say, yes, they agree, they understand what the honor code looks like, and we anticipate our students won't drink alcohol while they're here, for example. So some of those things. So.
Right. Very interesting. Okay, thank you for that.
Yeah.
We have a question on law school selection. So basically, what kinds of things should applicants look for when they're choosing a law school?
Yeah, there's some of that is going to be a little bit unique to each student. And I usually go back to even my undergraduate admissions days, those the 4 Ps, right? So you have place, programs, people, and price. And so place, some of that is when it comes to law school, some of that is region. Where do you want to see yourself working? Where do you picture yourself? We're actually kind of unique at BYU that more than half of our students don't stay in Utah. More than half go all over. We have a pretty nice national footprint. Our dean would say global footprint, but so we can get students where they want to be. But that's something to think about, as to where do you place your students. And so certain programs, if you want to do equine law, I think Kentucky is probably the place for you. But for the most part, be thinking about what programs they have, what you might want to be involved with. We have pretty robust, our business law, our entrepreneurial law. We're often ranked as one of the most innovative law schools in the country. So if that's exciting to you, we could be really a nice place to learn, especially with the Silicon Slopes sort of startup community we have nearby. That brings in a lot of students for us. But so, those sort of type of programs matter. And then getting to know the people. And for me, that's the visit or going to a campus visit to get a feel for the place, talk to the students, meet some of the professors, read the professors' bios, see what they're all about. For me, that's a big piece of the puzzle. Is finding a place where you feel comfortable, where you feel confident that you can be successful, and just law school is wherever you go. It's typically pretty stressful, so you just go to the place where you feel like you're going to get the support you need, and that's going to look a little bit different for different people. And so I think those are good questions to ask. And then of course price. I mentioned we're pretty fortunate that we have pretty great value. So our regular tuition is less than most in-state tuitions around the country, and then if you happen to be LDS, it's an even better deal, since we're a private school rather than in-state, out-of-state. The difference there, we have the kind of the LDS or not difference. But that price, if you can go to a school that is going to pay you to go and graduate debt-free and have more freedom to do what you want to do, to me that's a big plus. If the school, again, has the other resources to help get you where you want to go, if they're going to give you the education you want. I don't know if getting a free education in it's a school that just is not going to be up to your standards. I don't know if that's worth it. So you have a lot of things to figure out, and I don't know. I think different students have different sort of ratios there, right? They'll weigh each of those pieces a little bit differently. But to me, those are the factors to be thinking about.
No, I think you laid it out perfectly, the 4 Ps, and definitely I think scholarships are a big topic for students. But as you said, the lowest ranked school with the least opportunities might not make sense, even just from a time investment perspective. But scholarships you were talking about, those sound pretty incredible. And even if not, if the tuition's not too bad either, then options are open afterwards.
Yeah. Yep. That's what we found. And so all of those things, those things, they make a difference. What's funny, the place we're here in Provo, Utah, so right up against the mountains. Like even our football stadium is often listed as one of the most beautiful places to go play football. And our law school is even closer to the mountains. So it's pretty dramatic. So we do get people that are interested in skiing or mountain biking or hiking. They just kind of love the outdoors. And for some people, that's important. That's when they're thinking about place, where do I want to be? What's the experience I want? Like that's high on their list. Where others are like, I'm very value driven. I'm cost driven. I want to maximize the dollar. So a lot of different, like I said, the different priorities for those values. But hopefully each student is thinking about that, but really asking themselves some honest questions about what that looks like.
I haven't been to Provo, but I went to Salt Lake City a few years ago, and it was stunning. It was just those mountains there were incredible.
Yeah, it's beautiful. Obviously I'm a little bit biased. I grew up here for most of my life, but I think it's quite a lovely place. And so,
no, amazing nature out there for sure.
Yeah.
Let's see, we got some more here. Let's see. So this is a classic question. Letters of recommendation from famous politicians, senator, congressman, governor.
Right. My answer to that is always like, is it going to be a good letter of recommendation? Do they actually know you? And more than that, even, do they know your work? And so to me, it's fine. Like if you've done an internship with a senator so-and-so and they write you a letter, but it doesn't tell us anything about you, that means nothing. Like it really doesn't move the needle at all. So I'd rather have whoever the supervisor, whoever the staffer is that's in charge of the interns there. They can talk about how your skills and how you worked on your tasks, what you brought, what value you added to the job and to the office. All those things are much more valuable than the big name. And sometimes we get like maybe a judge will write a letter that says, "Oh, I grew up next to Johnny. He's a great kid. I highly recommend him. I think the world of his family. They're wonderful parents." And that doesn't help. So it really, if you work closely with somebody that happens to have a fancy title and they can really break down like very specifically who you are and why you are fantastic, that's great. Go for it. But the name is really not that important.
Yeah, I would think of it this way. Like if you worked as the chief of staff for a member of Congress or something, then you know them well, no doubt. But if you worked under the chief of staff, then maybe you want the chief of staff to write the letter, not the big name.
Yeah, I think you're right on. Yeah.
Yeah, we're of like minds on that. Let's see. Well, here's one about application volume. So we were talking about time at which one applies in the cycle.
Yeah.
And so obviously more opportunities available, more scholarship money relatively earlier. Is there a certain point where you get an inordinate flood of applications, at which point you want to apply before that flood hits?
Yeah, so our application opens up in September, and they essentially, about this point right here, we've received about 1/5 of the applications we anticipate we'll receive. So really, after the start of the new year, January hits, we'll get almost all the rest, January and February. That's our huge chunk. I think if you can get your application in early January too, that's still a little on the early side. But if you're waiting to the priority deadline, you're just with a mass of applications. So I do think there's some advantage to applying earlier. And honestly, and I think this is true for every admissions office, we really do try to be as judicious and objective as we can throughout the whole cycle. But sometimes, like I said, things do take shape, and so in a certain way. So it does seem like every year we'll get somebody that applies maybe mid-March, late March, and maybe there's somebody that's below our medians in both. And I think, oh man, this person looks fantastic. They really jump off the page. I wish they would have applied in December when we had some spots. Where they are right now, we just don't have we don't have the room, we don't have the flexibility to get them in. So that happens, that sometimes will happen. But we really do try our best to give everybody a full lead. We do. We make sure we have a 5-person admissions committee. Everybody gets at least 3 reads, and we talk about everybody as a group. So we really try to do our best no matter what. But there is some advantage to getting some things in. But here's one other caveat. I would say if the difference is applying early and you're taking the LSAT unprepared versus waiting till January and having a couple extra months to make sure that you put your best effort into that to get your best score, I would take the time to put into the LSAT and get your best score. So that typically to me will matter more than just getting it early.
I'm glad you covered that last part because I actually got the exact same question today and I gave the same response. If you could get even just a point or two more,
Yeah.
worth applying a little bit later.
Yeah. Yeah. Really, there's no, especially again, if you're before that priority deadline, there's, I don't think any disadvantage. It's very rare that I would say that you're missing out on an opportunity, especially if you're able to turn in a stronger LSAT score.
Right. But I will also suspect that if someone did take the January LSAT, if they do, then they'd want to apply immediately after getting that score back.
As soon as, have everything ready to go. When the score drops, push submit, so you get it ASAP.
Yeah, perfect. Let's see what else we got here. How do you view older versus younger applicants?
Yeah, no, well, as a general rule, it's nice to have that diversity. It's nice to have a combination of people with various levels of experience. And so, so that's one of the factors we look at. I mean, when I talk about, a resume, some people will come in with some just stronger life experience and a stronger resume than somebody coming straight out of undergrad. And so those things matter. Those things can help. And so, again, we don't necessarily have, we don't have like a ranking system where we say we like political internships more than we like people who were research assistants versus somebody who has 4 years of working in investment banking versus, there's nothing like that. You do your best to try to see who this person is and what they've done with the opportunities that they've had. And so, but as a general rule, we really do like having a variety of people, different ages, different life experience at the law school.
Yeah, that makes sense. So it's really just about having variety. You wouldn't want all old or all young. You want a mix across the spectrum.
Yeah, I think it's good. I think it's good for the classroom. It's good for our students. It's good to hear those different perspectives.
Is it true that older applicants, their undergraduate GPA might be considered slightly less because it's been a while?
I have found, so at the end of the day, that's still the number we report. I mean, even when people come in with graduate degrees, we still, of course, have to report the undergraduate GPA. But the graduate degree is another piece of information that will help us know if they're more prepared for law school. And so I do think that's what happens with our older applicants, is that at the end of the day, we're reporting that GPA, but we have another kind of set of a body of work to say, but I think they are stronger than that number. I think that they have some other skills, some other abilities, some other things to bring to the table. And so so to me, that's where the sort of the balance comes in, where I think a lot of times we are willing to sort of forgive that potentially lower GPA because they've proven themselves in other ways. And so I think that's fair to say.
So it's like some useful background information that adds a little bit more color to the application.
It does, yeah.
Cool. All right, let's see what else we got here. Could you share a bit about the trial advocacy program at BYU?
Yeah, well, so we have a nice trial advocacy program. So we have, obviously, second year, you can get involved with that and do a number of competitions, in fact, with a variety of topics. One unique thing that we're doing, though, that sort of jump starts that trial advocacy piece, I think we're moving, this will be our third year doing this, but it is our, it's like a boot camp, essentially. So after the first year, the first week after the finals are done, we have what's called our Trial Advocacy Academy, our Trial Academy. So it's like a week-long intensive, people that are interested in trial work come and do this, and it's free for our students. We bring in some top trial attorneys from around the country to come and basically coach them, work them through, teach them some of those practical skills that, the first year they might not be picking up just because it's so foundational. But it also helps them dive into that and be ready for first summer of those internships. And so, so our Trial Academy, there's some neat things happening there. Interestingly, it was so successful when we did that first one, we've added some other academies. So we have our Deals Academy, where this last year we took a dozen students to New York City, worked at a law firm for like the 3 or 4 days. Professors went out there with them, working through what mergers and acquisitions do they look like, doing the transactional law. So for those that are interested in trial work, they have that. There's the transactional side. This year we're adding the Appellate Academy. So we're taking the students to DC to work on some appellate work, to kind of throw them into that world. And then we've got one other one that's kind of in the works for Silicon Valley out in San Francisco. So we'll see when that comes together. So it's kind of exciting, doing some neat things.
And those sound great, like great opportunities to actually get some hands-on experience. That's much more practical in nature.
Yeah. Yeah, and that Deals Academy, like I think every student that I spoke to who went out there, they said that was such a highlight for them. And most of them are like, okay, I'm heading back to New York. That's my goal now. They just fell in love with the city, fell in love with the pace and the life there. And so, which is what they had in mind. They thought that's what they wanted, but they really sealed the deal with them. And they made some great connections too out there. So
that's awesome. That's great. Yeah, I wish more schools would do stuff like that. Let's see what else we got here. A couple other great questions. For those with military experience, veterans,
yeah.
Are there any mistakes they make or anything you're looking to see in their applications?
I can't really think of any just general mistakes that our veterans are making on their applications. That's another piece of information that, again, we say like that's some significant experience. That's something that just, again, can add to the classroom. And we have some veterans in our class. I can think of some of our run-outs this year and some of the neat things that they're doing. We actually have a pretty robust, as far as our JAG program. I think we might have had the biggest JAG program in the country this last year. We had people from each branch of the military that did JAG this last year, graduated into those different branches. And so there's some neat things happening. So, but I don't know if there's anything that's just a general mistake. I think it's kind of similar pitfalls is don't underestimate how long it's going to take you to prepare for the LSAT. Make sure that you're putting the time and care into your materials. So even with that military service and that great experience, that can't be the only thing. You've got to see some more to go along with it. But I think it's always a plus to see somebody that has that background.
I mean, it definitely shows discipline, hard work, commitment, perseverance, but you still got to have the numbers.
Yeah. You still got to get in range. You got to get to that place where we feel like you're in the ballpark at least, and then we can say, this person again really stands out. They've done some other things that really stand out, and that matters.
Very cool. Very cool. All right, so let's see. Do you have an option for students to start in the spring semester, or does everyone start in the fall?
Just fall start for us, which I think is pretty common. Last I checked, I think there were only 15 law schools or so, give or take, that have a spring start. So for us, we just do a fall start, so just once a year.
And what about current medians for those looking to apply now?
Yeah, our medians right now, we have a 164 on the LSAT, and last year our median GPA was a 3.82. I think we'd really just be happy to maintain the 3.8 that we've had the last couple of years. Both are, those are decent medians, and so that's kind of where if students have goals, if you're a freshman or a sophomore, absolutely keep working hard, keep your GPA up to your best there, and then if you're a little bit later on, then just dive into the LSAT prep. Just keep working hard at that because I think that'll open up doors.
Right. Are there any other particular programs or things you want to highlight about BYU in particular, things you haven't mentioned yet?
Yeah, well, there are a couple things. It's kind of neat. So we don't have any formal concentrations, but we have we have kind of a smaller class size, usually between 105 and 120. It's pretty typical. But we have a faculty to student ratio of 5.3. And so our students can really get in here and kind of craft their own specialization if that's what they want to do. So we have just a lot of neat opportunities happening, and that's everything from on the corporate side. I mentioned some of the entrepreneurial stuff. We have Law X, which is kind of a unique, innovative class where they go in and try to solve sticky legal problems using technology, using entrepreneurship skills. And so we've worked on bankruptcy and evictions, and this year it's going to be asylum, trying to help kind of facilitate the process. People who, you receive an eviction notice and they don't know what to do, and next thing you know, they have like 3 days to get out. So they actually built computer programs to help walk people through this, and so that's been kind of exciting. So on kind of the entrepreneurship side, the innovation side, there's a lot of cool things happening. But on the public service side too, we have a lot of neat opportunities. We have professors that take students down to Dilley, Texas every semester to work with women and children that are seeking asylum in asylum centers. That's pretty life-changing. It can be super rewarding. So a lot of neat things that are happening. I think our dean is one of those deans who just he really embraces innovation. He really is active and loves new ideas and is looking for ways. Let's see how we can make that happen. It's kind of fun to be here. It's fun to be part of that.
That's fantastic. It's really exciting to hear that you're on the forefront of so many things. I mean, the Silicon Valley stuff, all the travel and helping asylum seekers, that's really incredible work.
It's pretty neat. It's pretty neat. Yeah, it's fun. Our students are great. They really are great students, and it's fun to watch them making a difference, even as students. And of course, they had to come to the professional world, and they are solving problems for people, and they are helping people, and it's awesome. It's awesome to be part of that.
Amazing. Well, Bryan, I think we've hit all the major questions that were asked in the chat, although we haven't gotten to every single question. Do you want to share a little bit about the best way to get in touch with you and others in your office if students have follow-ups or questions about applying?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you can always go to our website to learn some more information. You can email admissions@law.byu.edu. That's kind of our general email address. If you want to reach out to me, I'm hamblinb@law.byu.edu, and happy to answer all the questions that you might have. And then, if you want to come out and visit, go on a tour, visit a class, like I said, visiting schools, getting a feel for a place, I think that makes a big difference. So we're happy to facilitate that too.
Amazing. Well, Bryan, thank you so much again for taking the time. Definitely encourage folks to get in touch with you with any admissions questions. If anyone wants to reach out to me about LSAT prep, feel free to email me directly as well.
That's awesome. Thanks, Steve. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for tuning into the show. Please subscribe if you haven't done so already to be notified of new episodes as I release them. And feel free to reach out if you need anything at all as you move forward with your prep. I'm happy to help however I can. In the meantime, I'll wish you all the best and take care.